Okay, welcome to looking at maintenance management issues. In particular, we're going to be looking at principles of management and different definitions of management and different ways to go about instigating it. Okay, so there's many definitions for management in a general sense, as you might imagine, and some are old, some are new. Again, there are stages where it's evolving into other things and different styles of management. But in a general sense, the definition of management can be seen by some samples that I've got here. The achievement of objectives through people, getting activities completed efficiently with and through other people, the process of achieving objectives, organizing resources to attain these, and then evaluating the results for the purposes of determining future action. The task of management is to make people capable of joint performance, make their strengths effective, and their weaknesses irrelevant. So, yeah, okay, so some examples. Now, maybe concluded that managers get tasks done through effectively managing other people. They make decisions, allocate resources, and direct activities of others to attain those goals. So, in a broader sense, the definitions provided indicate two salient features: deciding and doing. And then we can break those up into their building blocks of the maintenance management decision-making systems. For deciding, that's planning and organizing. And for doing, that's leading and controlling. So let's expand on those a little bit. So these elements of management, let's concentrate first on planning and organizing. Planning includes thinking about the fundamental nature of the organization and deciding where does the organization need to be positioned in its environment, how will the organization develop and deploy its particular strengths, how will the organization deal with threats and opportunities in the environment. So this includes refining fundamental and long-range ambitions and translating them into more specific and short-range objectives and methods of implementation. The planning also includes developing strategies, setting goals, making schedules, creating market forecasts and sales, and undertaking cost estimates concerning a new product, for argument's sake. Organizing, on the other hand, it refers to dividing an organization into hierarchical levels of reporting relationships and responsibilities. So you have units, typically called divisions or departments, and then subunits, typically called sections, for argument's sake. This organizing refers to coordinating units and subunits so their efforts and their overall processes mesh together and fulfill the overall organization objectives. The other elements of management are controlling and leading. So let's look at controlling. Controlling is the process of monitoring progress against objectives and standards derived from your planning. Controlling also includes the processes of closing the loop of management process by relating actual progress to that envisioned during that particular planning processes that you've done, because that's cyclical. Reporting, comparing and assessing of progress provide a basis for intervening, adjusting, replanning, and taking corrective actions if necessary. Leading, well, leading has at least two meanings. It could refer to a broad range of activities by which the managers establish the character and tone of their organization. Leading also could take into account activities which include articulating and exemplifying the distinctive values and style of the organization. Leading could also be referred to institution building, the view of the leadership. On the other hand, the other types of meaning that we can put to leading is that it refers to interpersonal influence process through which the managers communicate with subordinates about the accomplishment of their work. It could be the progress facilitated with information relevant to technical, coordinating, and motivational issues is exchanged. So, a few broad strokes there in that regard. Let's zero in again with the elements of management, and particularly looking at managing and leading. Managing and leading are not interchangeable terms. So things like managing, doing the right thing, organizing to get the aim accomplished efficiently, implementation of the plan, the objectives, determining how we are doing it. So leading is doing the right thing, setting an aim, communicating a vision, setting values, and determining what we are doing and why. So let's consider, envision a group of producers cutting their way through the jungle with machetes. The producers, the problem solvers, cut through the undergrowth, clearing it out. The managers, behind the producers, the problem solvers, sharpening the machetes, writing policy and procedure manuals, holding muscle development programs, bringing in improved technologies and setting up work schedules and compensation programs for machete welding individuals. The leader, The one who climbs the tallest tree, surveys the entire situation and yells, "Wrong jungle!" Okay, what does this all mean? Well, basically, how do the busy, efficient producers and managers often respond to this valuable information? Shut up, we're making progress. So the key point, of course, is that as individuals, groups, businesses, we're often so busy cutting through the undergrowth we don't even realize we're in the wrong jungle. The rapidly changing environment takes effective leadership more critical than it has ever been in every aspect of independent life. So really, it's about understanding that the leader has that envisioning process, looking into the future, and also looking around the environment and making sure that, yes, you are in the right jungle. All right, so what about business-centered management and how it relates to the elements of management? Well, as discussed in Module 1, there is a direct link between the circular strategic thought process of business-centered management and the continuous improvement cycle of PDCA, or Plan, Do, Check and Act. So slight enhancement of that table 2 effectively shows this connection. So you've got your planning is the plan, the doing is the organizing, the check is the controlling, and the act is the leading. So it's just another way to paraphrase or phrase, if you like, the way that it maps into PDCA. What about the overview of management theories? Well, there's lots of management theories. So there's no definitive management theory that covers all situations, as you might imagine. Each approach has its strengths and weaknesses, and most suitable approach to management in a given organization typically will be a hybrid anyway of several approaches. So here's some different ones: mechanistic, administrative, human relations, decision management, systems management, and contingency management. We're going to concentrate on 2 or 3 of these and zero in on them. All right, what about administrative management approach, or Fayol's principles of management? He's generally called the father of modern management. French mining engineer who created an administrative theory based on his own experience of what administrative structures work within organizations. The create administrative structures that promoted efficiency and effectiveness and which applied equally to all levels of the organization. He's the first theorist to propose management functions of planning, acting, controlling, and organizing. And also he went about, with other administrative theorists, proposed that to achieve success of administrative structures, the following principles need to be adapted to fit the needs of each organization. So things like span of control, so no supervisor to supervise more than 6 direct subordinates. This is basically the sort of foundations of the theories. Chain of command, there must be a clear line of authority within an organization with ultimate responsibility at the top. The buck stops here, that kind of mentality. The unity of command, no worker to have more than 1 supervisor per distinct task. Now, okay, this is one theory, one management approach. So a little bit more about that. The administrative approach, he talks about one of a manager's key roles was an organizer, and there were 16 duties of management in terms of organizing. Okay, so again, keep these in mind, this is just a theory and a particular approach. It's not always, it's not the one. There are many others and may not suit your organization or other organizations. But in this case, Fayol is talking about the 16 duties of the management in terms of organizing are to ensure that a plan is well prepared and strictly carried out, ensure that the human and material resources are consistent with the objectives, resources, and requirements of the organization as a whole, set up a single, competent, and energetic authority, coordinate activities and efforts, pass down clear, distinct, and precise decisions, the efficient selection of personnel who are competent and energetic and are employed in the right place, ensure that the duties of staff are clearly defined, encourage initiative and responsibility, ensure that reward for service is fair and suitable, use appropriate sanctions in the event of faults and errors, maintain discipline within an organisation, ensure that the interests of individuals are subordinated to the greater general interest, basically, ensure unity of command, supervise both material and human order, ensure that everything is under control, and 16, avoid excess regulation and paper control. Well, you'd think, looking at some of those other things, there'd be a lot of paper and regulation. So again, these are based on studies, based on people's experience. Another administrative management approach who is with Mintzberg. And Mintzberg talks about the management in an organisation has the following elements. The manager has to work with people. The manager is responsible for human, material, and financial resources. Decision-making is a critical element in the process of management. Leadership is also critical to management success. Information handling is important to management processes, and interfacing with the organisation with the outside groups is important for managers. So just picking on a couple of those. If you look at decision making is a critical element of the process of management. How many times we work with a manager that can't make a decision, you know, that type of thing. So, you know, it is critical that people have not only the ability, but the authority, I guess, to make decisions. Leadership is also critical to management success. Well, again, of course, you know, you can have only people that are managers, but leading a group, as we talked about, is much different to that. So, yeah, again, some of those things from our own life experience and work experience do ring quite true. The administrative management approach is criticised as being based on a closed system. In other words, everything happens within it. It doesn't really talk externally from the organisation. So there's no provision made for inputs received from external sources, you know, other competitors or the market, things like that. So it's very inward looking. So consequently, it's difficult for an organisation to respond to market changes because it's too busy, you know, handling internal matters all the time. So another management approach is called systems management approach. So let's have a definition and talk about where it came from. So definition comes from Stamatis in 2002, a management theory that views the organisation as a unified, purposeful combination of interrelated parts. Managers must look at the organisation as a whole and understand that activity in one part of the organisation affects all parts of the organisation, also known as systems thinking. So systems approach, systems thinking. It came about after, well, during World War II. It emerged as a result of the expansion of what's called the field of operations research and development of computers. So it's the computerization of management, looking at how to make, you know, quantitative decisions, you know, decisions based on quantitative data, I suppose. So a lot more use of mathematics and statistics to provide that quantitative method for management to analyze organizations compared to qualitative experiential ones where, oh yes, I've been in manager for 30 years and I know what I'm talking about type stuff. Whereas this is a quantitative thing where data is collected about inputs, outputs, failures, you know, successes, etc., and then decisions made on that. So systems management approach, there are two types. One's called the open system, one called the closed system. So as you might imagine, a closed system, there's no interactions with the environment, whereas an open system is influenced by outside forces. It receives inputs, raw materials, finance, human resources, information from the external environment, and it takes that and it's processed by mechanisms within the organisation, returns as goods or services back to the external environment. The feedback loop enables the organisation to respond to environmental factors such as market forces, demand, and legal requirements. So again, obviously, it's a far more interactive, connected, feedback type system. So it's able to react to market forces, to if you can't get your raw materials because there's a strike or because there's a flood in a mine, so therefore your coal's not coming through. So that would define an open system in terms of the systems management approach. Further with definitions and origins, the general systems theory also includes concepts of synergy, the whole is worth more than the sum of its parts, and flexibility, there is more than one way to solve a problem. Contingency, the situation determines the best solution, or what works in one solution may not obviously work in another. So therefore then it opens up, you know, not just management, but it opens up solutions to your organisation that allows you to be far more flexible and therefore able to bring in different plans and be able to react rather than be, you know, have delays or we only do it this way and that's the way it is. So yeah, there's some positives there. Again, the application to maintenance with regards to systems management approach. Well, maintenance subsystem, obviously, within a larger system. So as a maintenance unit or maintenance department, you're part of a large organisation. And to achieve the business objectives, maintenance as a subsystems interacts with other subsystems to effectively use the resources and create synergies. Maintenance must interact with internal subsystems, production, finance, procurement, and human resources, and apply information and feedback from external sources, legislation, community, consumer, competitor, market forces, in order to achieve the maintenance objectives. Remember, the business objectives, maintenance objectives are very closely tied. Another management theory approach is what's called human factors management approach. What do we mean by that? Well, again, as part of the whole process of evolving management theories, it became clear that organizational or mechanical means alone did not provide a comprehensive approach to management. In other words, it's not all about production. Humans are obviously an important link in the whole chain of events. So humans perform the work, and so humans must be considered in the management theory. Kelly 2000 talks about human factors including morale, motivation, attitude, pride, resentment, envy, resistance to change. As you might imagine, some of those things are quite difficult to quantify and to measure. Morale, okay, is that worth $3 million? Well, it is if, as we talked about beforehand, if you have inefficient systems, then morale, does go down. If you have poor maintenance strategies, morale goes down because everything is, an emergency. Everything has to be done, straight away. So therefore, resentment occurs. Pride of, doing your job well done. If everything's on top of you, it's very difficult to do a good job. So therefore, it's very difficult to have pride in what you're doing. So some interesting aspects there with regards to a range of different aspects relating to human factors. Mayo, back in the 1920s, outcome of his Hawthorne experiments at Western Electric in the US, confirmed working conditions affected productivity and that considering the needs of workers would be good for business. So again, out of all of that grew human factor aspects. We're going to look at three different theorists here, Maslow, Herzberg, and McGregor. Let's start by looking at Maslow. Now, Maslow talks about, in the 1940s, constructing his management theory based on human hierarchy of needs. So the lower needs must be satisfied before the higher needs can be met. And basically, one person's basic physical needs for food, water, shelter, and safety are met. Then the desire to belong to a group must be met, followed by the need to be respected, and then followed by the need to be fulfilled must be met. So basically what it is that Maslow is saying that as we move up here, you get self-actualization. In other words, a person becomes fully who they should be as you build up those hierarchy of needs. So in terms of an effective manager, then you must determine whether the individual where they lie on that hierarchy of needs and attempt to satisfy the need in order to achieve a productive worker. So obviously help them to move ahead as well. All right. Human factors management approach. This is McGregor now. 1960s, in McGregor's book, The Human Side of Enterprise, he outlined some human motivational theories. He called them Theory X and Theory Y. So Theory X reflects authoritarian management approach, working on the assumptions that people dislike work and will avoid it. People only work for money. People actively resist change, and people have no ambition. So Theory X managers use threats, financial incentives to maintain tight control to achieve organizational goals. Now, McGregor, the assumptions made in Theory X are not correct, and Theory X type managers will obviously not succeed. All right, so then, Theory Y, let's have a look at that. It reflects humanistic approach where Maslow's hierarchy of needs is taken into account and assumes that people find work as natural as play. People will achieve goals that are motivated by rewards that satisfy their higher needs, and people will seek responsibility under positive conditions. So Theory Y managers, basically they're more sensitive to people's needs. They explain, they go about, taking the time to explain. They're inclusive of discussing the processes and reasons why, and also, they're inclusive in making the decisions. Now, subsequently, managers and organizations need to employ a combination of Theory X and Y management strategies. All right, so you can't always, be sitting around, feeling good about yourself, et cetera, and nothing gets done. So, as they're saying, a lot of these theories are a combination of things to take the good and the bad out of different elements to ensure that management leadership is occurring. Human factors management, again, let's look at Herzberg, the third theorist that's been mentioned. So Frederick Herzberg, in his book, The Motivation to Work, also known as the hygiene of motivation theory, Herzberg determined job satisfaction and dissatisfaction, as the case may be, resulted from different and often unconnected factors. Okay, so consider hygiene factors which lead to short-term job satisfaction to be company policy and administration, remuneration, type of work and amount of supervision. So in other words, someone's over your shoulder all the time. Working conditions, interpersonal relations. So these factors do not motivate people to work, but their absence acts as a demotivator. In other words, if you have no supervision and you're left to your own devices, then perhaps as a unified collection, people might go, oh yeah, I'll get to it, I'll wonder about it. So basically, these factors don't motivate people, but as they're saying, without them there, they can be demotivating. Interpersonal relationships, obviously, if you don't get on with people at work, well, then that's very demotivating as well. So the motivational factors which lead to long-term job satisfaction are achievement, recognition, responsibility, interest in the job, and the possibility of advancement. So then the focus turns to the human face of the workforce rather than the numbers and the dollars. And who cares about the workforce? We're just going to make sure that we have production, and make as much money as we can. So therefore, in these cases, the manager needs to appreciate, that the worker wants job satisfaction, and then obviously the quality of working life is exceptionally important. And over the years, we've talked more, particularly in the last, 10, 15, 20 years, talking about, work-life balances and getting that quality right. So again, we can see that management theories and management approaches evolve over time and become, part of the framework that different places these things get implemented. In other places, we know if you work in one place and move somewhere else where it's completely different management strategy, then it's pretty obvious that you move from one area to another when people have different emphasis on the way that they manage and lead people. And obviously you have unhappy and happy workforces in either of those cases. So human factors management approach, and let's look at its importance to maintenance management. Human factors such as morale and motivation have a direct connection with effective maintenance management. Kelly in 2000 says, maintenance work has many of the attributes that promote worker satisfaction. Craftsman status, obviously you do your job well, you've got qualifications, you've got pride in the quality of your work. It's varied and it's an interesting job overall. The central premises of participating in this kind of management is that the worker's empowerment, and the employee who feels empowered within an organisation will be more productive and feel greater job satisfaction. So through this participation, obviously people feel as if they have some worth, and they also feel as if their contributions are being taken into account, that they are seen as valuable assets, but in a real sense as people as well. So organisation structure. Let's look at that for a brief moment. Organisation is characterised by a common goal or unity of purpose, a system of delegated responsibilities and jobs, a method of operating together showing cooperation and coordinated effort with control. So most organisations are complex. They're made up of individuals, collected into formal or informal groupings. The groups function within internal and external environments that contain conflicting pressures. In other words, yes, we want to get this done today, but however, there's a flood, we can't get this out, so therefore, the external pressure of trying to, train coal across a floodplain is impossible, so therefore then it's conflicting. We're getting all this production, but we can't get it out. Market forces, strike, there's a strike occurring, so again, we're trying to get deliveries from somewhere, but there's a strike, so there's always internal and external conflict going on for you to try and achieve what you're doing. So, with complex organisations, the sources of pressure from external environment include board of directors, looking at the share market and making sure the price stays high, the owners, funding sources, the bank's for argument's sake, could be an international bank, competing organisations, so your competitors, government regulators, clients and customers, suppliers, community, and the union. So all of those pressures are coming from the external environment need to be taken into account as you go about doing your daily business. So just to reflect on the maintenance organisation, again, looking about this kind of discussion that Kelly brings up, the primary task of maintenance organisation is to match maintenance resources, the men, the spares, the tools and the information, the men and the women, to the maintenance workload that you have, so that the maintenance objective, sustaining at minimal total cost, plant which is capable of producing the desired level and quality of output can be attained. To achieve this goal, system and structure and systems must be in place. Seems bleeding obvious, doesn't it? But Kelly's talking about juggling these things, and he talks about systems, the short and long-term work planning and control systems that are in place. The structure, the resources structure, the location, magnitude, configuration, logistics for deployment of all resources necessary for the maintenance to be carried out efficiently and effectively. Includes workshops, personnel, spares, tools and equipment, services, information needed to be carried out, that maintenance function overall. So administrative structure, to the resource structure, and then the administrative structure, the organisation task indicating interrelationships and management responsibility. So it's obvious who to go to, who to talk to, who to get things done, and obviously also making sure that that efficiency carries through, because then obviously if people know who should be doing what, then it's going to lead in a much better overall. So when you look at the maintenance objective overall, you can look at your documentation, of course. all these things are interrelated and cyclical in nature as well in some ways. So, you're looking at your life plan of your particular asset, for argument's sake. You're looking at prevention and the workload of the people, your resource structure, your work planning systems, again, mostly computerized, taking into account all, pre-planned, unplanned maintenance as well. Again, the administrative structure, of course, if you've got that efficiency there, then if something is required, like particular parts, then very, very quickly they could be, organized, ordered, and got out on site. And of course, you've got to document, whether it's from the job sheet all the way through to the order for the parts, all the way through to, okay, we're going to have planned maintenance or perhaps a shutdown, a larger shutdown. All has to meet in with the maintenance objective. And again, as we always talk about maintenance objectives, they have to fit in with the business objectives as well. All right, so organizational structure overpins, your administrative structure and your resource structure, as we've talked about with those kind of descriptions there. Maintenance and administrative structures, most readily depicted by the organization tree. So that way, again, looking at who's in the hierarchy and who you need to talk to and what the information and communication flows are. It shows the roles within the organization and also the reporting structures. The maintenance administrative structure can be centralized, can be decentralized, it could be a combination of centralized and decentralized. Obviously, if the mining company is based in Sydney, but obviously the mine is up here in Queensland, well, you've got a decentralized system. And then on site, you might have centralized systems that obviously look after things on site. So really a combination of things in that particular example. It can be quite complex, and it can be, depending on the size, or say an international organization compared to a national organization. Again, as you can see very, very quickly, you can see how we could have a centralized or a decentralized system and the complexities that are involved in that. So the maintenance administrative structures, if they're centralized, includes the ability to implement a uniform approach to objectives and strategy and easier direction, coordination, control. So it's all there, in a centralized sense. It may even just mean you can walk down the corridor, for argument's sake, compared to a decentralized one where you've got high levels of equipment ownership and usually support faster responses to the needs of production. All right, most organizations have a combination of centralized and decentralized administrative structures. Just to finish off, another form of management is what comes about from a matrix structure. And matrix structures are quite common in service organizations and project management organizations. They're less prevalent in plant-based organizations, such as mining companies, manufacturing, and utilities. There's two distinct management teams. You have the discipline manager, and they manage the technical capabilities and availability of their team members. Teams like engineering, procurement, construction, production, maintenance, and marketing. And then you have project managers, which manage the requirements for a number of multidisciplinary projects. So you've got people in procurement, but they might also be working across another area, for argument's sake. They might be part of looking at the actual on-site shutdown, for argument's sake. So therefore, they have to have some idea when they're doing the shutdown that as part of that maintenance crew, they're procuring equipment, procuring parts, that type of thing. The advantages of a matrix structure is that you have efficient use of resources. So the requirements for engineering resources can be spread over several projects. It's likely that they would be, some peak requirements, but projects can be timed to utilize available resources, so it's just scheduling. Disadvantages: employees have two managers, and this can result in confusion for employees. Which instruction should I follow? Who's actually my real manager? And as they're saying, there's really two managers. It's about the assignment of you as an individual to particular projects. So yes, you could have fierce competition for resources. Project A is more important than project B in some people's eyes, so particularly project A people. So therefore you as the resource kind of feel torn between the two things. So the disadvantages are that with those two managers, it needs to be coordinated between that discipline manager and the project manager, such that you aren't getting confusion of what you're supposed to be doing and who you're supposed to be listening to for that particular project, or indeed which project you should be focusing on more than other in terms of priority. All right, so overall with Module 2, in terms of management systems, arguably, detailed knowledge of management theory and principles is not going to help, obviously, a maintenance supervisor maintain a piece of equipment any better, because obviously, technically, you've got to get in there and get it done. However, such knowledge does set the scene for the processes required to initiate ongoing improvement of maintenance efficiency and effectiveness. In other words, if you have some idea about leadership, management styles, management theories, you know, understanding that people do want to be valued, people do have an opinion, and they've got experience that they can call on. So therefore, then ultimately, when you've got them there, you know, doing the maintenance task, and if you have some idea of those things, then it will set the scene to enable you to go about doing that far more efficiently, and you know, with a happier workforce in that regard. So considered management theories such as systems management. It considers an organization to be composed of many interrelated and interactive subsystems. Administrative management proposed a set of timeless administrative principles based on Henry Fay Old's own experience in mining and quarrying industries in France. Human factors management demands consideration of human needs and characteristics when managing teams. So we looked at those broad management theories. Each of these theories has its merits and assists in determining the most appropriate management approach. Obviously, you know, some things work better than others, and as we talk more and more, in a general sense, it's really a hybrid of these things. Ultimately, you can consider centralized and decentralized administrative structures as they apply to the maintenance structure. So overall, what you can see is that management, yes, it's important. Yes, you could argue that, as we were just talking about in that last slide, that yeah, it's not going to help me get my job done because I still got to, you know, basically pull out that oil filter or pull down that engine. But the reality, of course, is it's about in the holistic approach of understanding that to ensure that you can do that job effectively and efficiently and have, you know, people working good as a team, that it's important to really understand some of these management strategies and management theories and put some of those practices into your particular workplace.